And we're back. Next up, we have Conrad Tolosa. He is one of the founding members of Ghoti Hook and also runs the website Decapolis.com. I've been a huge fan of him for years, and I'm very excited to have him on our segment, Skyping with the Stars. How are you doing today, Conrad?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Excited to be on.
So I want to start off with talking about the band Ghoti Hook itself. Hugely influential punk band, I think, and not just within the Christian music scene. I meet a lot of people who aren't religious at all that love Ghoti Hook, specifically the first two albums, Sumo Surprise and Banana Man, which were the two that you had, the two that you were in the band for and were one of the songwriters for. Do you still find a lot of people contacting you specifically about Ghoti Hook, or has it really shifted more towards the website now?
Yeah, it's been a while because I was in the band in basically the mid-'90s, and I left the band in '97. So, it's been close to like 15 years. So the only people that I run into that know that that I was in Ghoti Hook or even know the name Ghoti Hook are, if I run into like my kids' teachers, like at their Christian school or their youth group pastors, because those people are like 25ish now, and so that they were teenagers at the time that I was in the band. So, kids, teenagers have no idea who the band is, but people in their mid to late 20s, those are the ones that were who actually listen to it. And then, so now it's kind of weird because I'll only be recognized by, youth group pastors or, stuff like that, or promoters through Ghoti Hook, but in over in Pennsylvania, there's a Christian rock festival called Purple Door, and I MC one of the stages. I've MC'd one of the stages for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, and I'll actually be recognized for that, just as, oh, you're the guy from the Purple Door stage. So it's kind of, split up a little bit. And every once in a while, I'll just run into some random person, like at work. Somebody was emailing me about whatever, and then it's like, oh, wait, were you in Ghoti Hook? So it was just kind of random. But it definitely has dropped off because, it's just been so long.
You are extremely good at doing the MC at Purple Door. I remember the last year that I went to Purple Door, I started to just kind of not really get into the music as well. It was like newer bands that I wasn't really into. But I would still just hang out by the HM stage and just listen to you in between bands because your banter was just so random and off the cuff. I just love the fact that for you it just seemed like they threw you on stage and you're just like, okay, I guess I got to do something for about 20 minutes. And you always
that's exactly what it was because they had me as an MC and I'm just there basically to introduce bands and sponsors, but I just get there's so much time in between bands that I kind of just took it on myself to really just entertain myself. So even though, MC is basically just introduce bands, to me that's just so boring. So I'll just stand up there and I'll ultimately just talk and interact with the crowd and just do totally random stuff and then get, the crowd into it. And ultimately, if you're not entertaining yourself, you're not entertaining anybody. So it's not like, I get up there and you're the typical youth group guy and go, hey, how's everybody doing today? And, and try to, who's excited about Jesus? It's just, I get up there and then I just start making fun of people from New Jersey. It's just like, whatever comes up, then I'll kind of just go with it. And then, even if I get hecklers, then I'll start getting, I'll get them into, I'll start playing along with their stuff and, just self-deprecating humor, just whatever comes up. And it really is a lot of fun. And it's just kind of funny how, in the central Pennsylvania area, I'll go to McDonald's and that's how I'll be recognized. They won't even know my name. They just know me as basically that random guy on the stage who just basically wastes his time.
Now, you probably don't remember this at all, but maybe I would say about 4 years ago, I was trying to shoot a documentary about Christian music. And I had booked you for an interview at Purple Door, and we did an interview. And you actually started talking about the Christian music scene, especially its move towards heavy metal. And one of your comments made your geek colors shine so brightly because you described the lead singers of the band as sounding like a combination of Cookie Monster and Cobra Commander, which was such a brilliant comparison that I've never heard anyone else make that comparison before, but it's the best way to describe it. And that's essentially why I stopped going to Purple Door after a while, was because that was 99% of the bands that were there one year, and I was just like, no, I'm kind of done with this. But you were talking about how you're not the regular youth pastor up there, like, hey, who's excited for Jesus and stuff like that. I'm not a super religious person anymore. I kind of had a falling out of religion, but I still read Decapolis every day, and I think the reason is because you do these devotionals that are very easily accessible, and they're really down to earth, and in a certain way, my problem with religion has a lot to do with church and not so much the actual religion. And and what you do is, you take the Bible, which I've read and I enjoy it and I believe in a lot of it, but you take the Bible and you put it into basically just how to be a good person, and using that as like a guide to it, which I think a lot of people forget about. And you make it fun. You have your like Star Trek references and your Star Wars references, and you really bring a much more down-to-earth way of ministry on that site that I think anybody can enjoy, not just a religious person.
Right.
Now...
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of that has to do with, for a while, Decapolis was basically just your blog. And then it kind of turned into something bigger. Was that always the intent when you started Decapolis, or was it after a while you're like, I think I can do something more with this?
Decapolis always, well, really, it started off when I was in Ghoti Hook, and actually all the way on, if everyone remembers the advent of AOL, AOL actually used to have, message boards on them, and it kind of just, interacting with fans or whatever, and then it kind of progressed to the point where I was answering a bunch of spiritual questions over and over, and then I was like, well, this is kind of, why don't I just have a repository for all this stuff? So ultimately, Decapolis, that's always at its heart was answering people's spiritual questions. Christians or non-Christians, it didn't matter, because I had, seminary training, like all that stuff, and, it's just something that I've always really enjoyed. It's, theology and all that, and it's just something that, people kind of just make really difficult when it really comes down to a few basic things, and that's really ultimately the way it's always been. And because I was in the band, I was, popular in the Christian rock industry, and I kind of had, like minor celebrity status with that. I kind of would be able to have a little bit of, sway in the industry where I could get, music reviews, all that stuff. So for a while there, the music, the website revolved around music. Even though I was doing all the spiritual stuff, I full well totally realized that no one is going to go to a website just for spiritual stuff, for the most part. And then, so I actually had a decent amount of hits because, we had tons of reviews and, everyone was setting up their stuff. But then it's just, other websites came along and started doing it better, and they're like, well, do I really need to be doing that stuff? And, so now I'm really just focusing on, basically answering spiritual questions, but in the form of devotionals, something that's really self-contained and really short and something, fun to read, and in a way that is completely accessible and applicable. And there's just a lot of stuff, even, when you go to church and, some whatever pastor or whoever has some sort of sermon, they come up with this great idea, and ultimately it comes down to Jesus loves you, be a good person, or whatever. But, it's, you have to know how to do it, and it's like, oh, well, this is great. Yeah, I'm supposed to, love my enemies, whatever. But what does that mean in real life? So that, what I do is I just try to make it applicable to, like, okay, well, everybody, their very first, community basically is their family. So if you can't do this stuff within your family, then, you're going to have a hard time, ministering to, other people in need, whatever. But, I always just try to make it about the application of it. And I hit the everyday type of stuff. running into a red light, or being annoyed at your boss, or being annoyed at your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever. And I just try to take some of these things and some of the biblical things and boil them down to the everyday, and then make it where people actually know what it means. Because when people go around saying, ultimately, Jesus loves you and, love your enemies, that all sounds great, but it's so easy just to kind of forget it and not know how to apply it, and especially all the millions of Bible verses. It's like, oh, yeah, you're supposed to walk by God's word. Well, what does that mean? I just spoke to a bunch of kids on a couple Wednesdays ago at my kids. They go to a Christian school, and I was there for chapel. And, everyone knows, oh, you're supposed to walk by faith. So the very first thing I say is, well, okay, somebody tell me how to walk by faith. And I just get a bunch of blank stares. And that's the type of stuff that I really try to attack, is all these things that everyone's heard from so long, from, since they were little. Oh, all I had to do is, walk by God's word and live by faith. But nobody actually knows what that actually means. And so that's the type of stuff that I really, really want to, that I break down to its, everyday components, so that as soon as, you listen to something like that or read it, and hopefully while you're listening, you go, oh, I can use it with this, this, and this when my mom yells at me for this, or, I get a flat tire, or, whatever. So ultimately, that's what I try to do with Decapolis.
And it's good. I mean, like I said, I still visit it, and it is always a good read. I do kind of miss the blog atmosphere of, like, the early days of Decapolis, I would say 5-6 years ago, when one of my favorite things that you've ever done on that website, and I don't even think I can find it in the archives anymore, but there was an ongoing saga about a bird that got stuck in the hood of your car.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like every day you'd update it with pictures of the bird and, like, trying to figure out, like, you refused to take it off because you were convinced that it would eventually just blow off the front of the car. And
yeah.
It was the most entertaining thing I've ever read, and I would just show it to people on, like, a daily basis. I'd be like, oh my God, you gotta read this.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to, in a way, I try to do that with the devotional now, because I kind of had a standalone, stuff. But I actually am trying to work. I've been trying to figure out how to work that stuff back into it, because really I had this huge lack of, I just didn't have enough spiritual stuff that just covered everything. What is worship? That's a 9-parter there. What is faith? That's like a 6-parter. And I just had to go through a million things over, like, the past year and a half, where, I would try to write 3 a week, and that's like 2 or 3 hours just writing one. And so that was, with my schedule and stuff, that was really difficult. So, I kind of replaced for a while the blog stuff with, just having a repository of this stuff. Because ultimately my goal is to have, with the devotionals, is to have 365 days of these things, so I can get, basically combine it and give it, whoever wants to use it can use it as their daily devotional, 40 years after I'm dead. Because it occurred to me, I was going through, there's a super, super popular devotional called My Utmost for His Highest. And it's written by Oswald Chambers, and it was, late 1800s, early 1900s, and everybody uses it. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll use this for my, my family devotions. And then I would read it, and it's like, it was so unusable, really, because it was basically the stuff that you always hear. It's like, here's some story, Jesus loves you, or here's some story, be good. And it was so, there was no application. You really had to come up with your own application, and you had to jump from some analogy to how in the world are you going to actually use it in everyday life. So that is actually kind of my ultimate goal. And so that's for a while, for like a year and a half, where I was really pumping out the devotionals. And then now I'm at the point where I have about 120 of them. And now I went back and, I'm kind of like killing myself for doing so many. So now I'm like kind of going back so I can kind of give myself a little bit of a break by writing a few new ones, but then going back and reposting the old ones, but editing them and then making them better, and then realizing that, oh, okay, this is really poorly worded, or, you know, this joke is just terrible, and, you know, and just trying to make it a little bit more usable. And then, you know, then still trying to get to the site to where, you know, ultimately I have 5 updates a week, 1 every day. And then, you know, I'm slowly trying to work the blog stuff in, but right now it's actually kind of like this, almost like Twitter jokes, you know, where that's pretty much what I have time for. So now it's kind of like compressed. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out the right balance, because I have the devotional stuff, which I really want to spend time on, but at the same time with the blog stuff, I know that that's fun to read. I just need to come up with a good way where I can have that, you know, where I'm spending time on both of them, but I'm not killing myself to write a blog, which ultimately 40 years down the road isn't really going to help me. But, you know, right now it actually does, because it does help keep people interested. Because I fully know that there's hardly anybody that goes online to go, oh, I want to read a devotional. You know, I want to grow closer to God. And let me type into Google and say, you know, awesome devotional. That's funny. You know, it's so I'm trying to, you know, strike a balance with it by having the bloggy type stuff with, you know, the time that I spend on the devotionals.
Yeah, you're kind of the reason why I started watching American Idol for a while, because you used to always do those daily updates.
Yeah, and man, I totally wish I could do that. It's just the amount of time spent, because, man, especially that stuff, it's so easy. I mean, it's just like people, somebody's just out there trying to make it easy on me to comment and to be sarcastic with stuff, because there's so much stuff that's bad. And not only bad, it's just bad ideas. Like, people have no idea what they're doing when they pick a song or do this or that. And it's so easy to make fun of.
I lost so many Twitter followers because I would live tweet American Idol after a while.
Yeah.
And apparently people don't care if I have funny comments about how awful someone's doing. But I mean, I think that's one of the biggest appeals of something like Twitter. Twitter is the only thing that makes watching an award show bearable to me anymore. It's just like sitting there and following comedians and listening to what they have to say about how bad the award show is.
Yeah. And I have to admit, I'm like a really, really late comer to Twitter. And I really haven't been able to figure out how to use it well. You know, and really, the way that I've been looking at it, basically, is an RSS feed. You know, that's how I looked at it for forever. And then I realized, okay, well, you know what? I can't just have, you know, my updates from Decapolis showing up on the Twitter feed, because then it just says, oh, what is faith, part 4, you know, and then some link. And so I kind of have to make it interesting so people will want to click on it. So I really only started doing this like a couple weeks ago. So I'm still I'm totally far behind this thing, but, you know, it's one of those things where it's just me trying to power all this stuff through. And, you know, I have life, you know, I have a full-time job, I have a family, I have a studio to run, I'm on the board at my kids' school, and I'm also on the board of my dad's ministry. So it's just like I have tons of stuff. And then on top of that, I'm trying to do all this Decapolis stuff. So it's trying to figure out all this stuff is, I'm a little bit behind, but, you know, at the same time, it's trying to maximize what I can do with Decapolis. But, you know, I'm, some of my responsibilities, like, I've been on the board of Hershey Christian School for a while, and so my term is up. So when that's up, then hopefully I'll be able, my plan is to replace all that time that I was spending at the, you know, doing school board stuff with, you know, devoting it to Decapolis.
Well, I mean, Twitter did get you onto a podcast, so that's a start.
Yeah. But, you know, my Decapolis, you know, Twitter followers has been at 82 forever. And, you know, just before that, it was at 77 for, I don't know, 3 months. You know, so it's not moving. And I haven't figured out what I'm supposed to do. And, yeah, but I'm always constantly trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, and just trying to figure out how do I get more readers. And, you know, I don't know. I'm stuck.
I've discovered just being yourself on there and just doing whatever helps. Because you do, like, I realized the same thing you realized, that I was, for a little while, every other tweet was like, read this article that I wrote, listen to this podcast that I was on. And you need, like, once I started to mix it up with, like, content and jokes and things that would make people actually want to read what I had to say, it makes them more interested to click your links as well.
Right.
And I think that you were just saying that about what you're trying to do as well. I mean, it does help. If people want to be entertained, they don't want to read about what food you're having for lunch, like some people use Twitter for.
Right.
And I don't understand the Foursquare thing that's going on, but whatever.
Yeah. And that's ultimately the problem I have, too, with devotionals, because the whole term isn't entertaining. Everyone goes on the internet to be entertained. They're not going there to improve their spiritual lives. So it's kind of like I have a product that people don't really want. So I don't really want to sucker people into coming to my site by having this other stuff. But I'm just hoping that through having just making it fun and just kind of being a little bit more focused on my audience, that will hopefully people who believe in, my tagline is faith, culture, sarcasm, that people will go, oh, I'm sarcastic and I'll enjoy that.
I do want to real quickly touch upon one last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, going back to Ghoti Hook, and now you're doing Dive Bomber, which is basically the punk rock Partridge Family. What do you think about the term Christian music? Because I've been noticing throughout for like 10 years, a lot of the bands that I really loved in the music scene, Reliant K, MXPX, Five Iron Frenzy, all were bands that really just did not want that title. They wanted to just be seen as a band. And I feel like that's a really common feeling amongst musicians in that industry. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, the first thing is there is no definition for Christian rock. There is no there's no definition of like punk rock. Like everyone has their own definition, so it's so hard to be a part of something or not be a part of something, because instead of using Christian rock, let's use punk rock. Well, what does punk rock mean? It doesn't mean fast beats with Ramones type chords, or is punk a philosophy? So it's the same thing that people had, the difficulties that people said with, oh, you're not punk rock because your band doesn't stand up for this, or you're not, this or that. It's the same thing with Christian music in general, because there is no definition of what it is. Because some people have Christian music mean that, oh, they're an evangelistic type band, or they're a worship type band, and then other people mean, oh, we're Christians in a band. And that's how I've seen a million, the cooler bands. They always say, oh, we're Christians in a band. So the way that I get away from all that and kind of just state it for myself, there's a little bit of an echo. Can we turn that down or something?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. So what I do is just I just say Christian artists. So having a Christian artist that transcends genre, and it's just like saying female artist or male artist, or something like that. And then you kind of get away from all that. Or you can also use the term Christian market artist, and that's really where I think a lot of bands really wanted to stay away from, by not saying, hey, don't call us a Christian band, because they didn't want to just be limited to the Christian market. So the term that people should be using is, oh, are you a Christian market artist? So it always just came down to definition. And so I really, I empathize with everyone who's always had to deal with that stigma, and what some people think is a stigma, because it kind of limits you in a bunch of different ways, where a church will think that it means one thing, that you're a preachy band, and then general market people are going to think it's something totally different, and then kids are going to think it's totally different, and Christian parents are going to think it's different. So it's just one of those things that, because there is no unified definition, it always just created all these problems. So, for me, we dealt with that too, and we kind of came at it, hey, we're Christians in a band or whatever. But, looking back on it now, it really is just, hey, we're Christian artists, and, take it for what it's worth. And every Christian artist still wants their music to be heard by whatever. But when you say Christian artist, that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is, saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus every single time. You could be a Christian artist that sings about, hippopotamuses. So, that's a topic close to my heart. So, it's just one of those things. So, like me, you're mentioning I'm in basically a punk rock Partridge Family with my family here. So yeah, I'm a Christian artist, and if people can take that for whatever it's worth, but the songs I write, I just write, stupid songs about, robots and whatever. And so if you just kind of say Christian artist, it kind of makes the definition a little bit looser, and then it's not like you're forced into, oh, you're a Christian band, and then that means that, I don't know, even my explanation is all over the place just because there is no definition. So it just really comes down to that. The lack of definition just creates problems for everybody, and then so it causes some people to run away from it because it means the wrong things to a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's something that just recently kind of came back to me, having recently watched the 5 Iron Frenzy documentary that came out last year, which is, if any of my listeners haven't seen it, whether you've heard of 5 Iron Frenzy or not, it's just an incredibly interesting documentary to see. Just kind of about a band that didn't fit in either area for whatever reason. They were too preachy for mainstream and not preachy enough for Christian rock. So it's such an intriguing documentary. But thank you for coming by, Conrad. It was great having you. Everyone go check out Decapolis.com. It really is some of the best work in devotionals and just combining pop culture with religion in a way that I think more people should look at.
Yeah, so if anybody out there is into Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever, and has a little bit of faith and, in you and a little bit curious about stuff, that's kind of what I hit in just everyday language. And, so if you're a little bit curious, just stop by and hope you like it.
All right, thanks. We'll be back after this commercial break.